It's a nice sunny day, but it's a little bit cold outside. So it's a nice day for staying in and doing some storytelling with our elders, Barb and Clarence Nepinak. And I just want to say that where I am at Dalnavert Museum was built in 1895, 24 years after the Treaty 1 was signed. And it was built on the lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. And so we just want to honor that legacy and that story as we head into our storytelling today for spring break. Okay, over to you, Barb and Clarence.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll start off, first of all, it's an awkward time of the season right now because we're just getting over winter and we can't tell any legends because that's the proper time to tell legends. So we're not going to do that today. But what we are going to do is we're going to read you a couple of stories. And these are storybooks that were just published recently. And it's based on different teachings. Like there's, I think 8 altogether. The one I'm going to read, 10 altogether. Yeah. So the one I'm going to read is called The Love of the Dance, and it's very culturally appropriate. And there's different ones. There's the strength of his hair. I don't know if you could see that. And
I just have to in my video for let's see if I can. There we go. Okay, go for it.
Okay, so there's a series of these, and there's this one. And then the nature of life, the gifts of his people, and the catcher of dreams. And there's 2 more, the sacred eagle feather, and the other one is called the tobacco offering. And these are actually very good books. They're very current, and they just came out. There's very little publication of Indigenous stories such as this, and I would encourage people to order them. It was put together by Charlene Barehead and her husband Wilson Barehead, and also another person, Chloe Mustock. But anyway, there's these books, and they can be ordered, and it's by High Water Press. And this involves a lot of children. It's based on children's stories. So the first one I'm going to read to you is it's called The Love of the Dance. And it's unfortunate, like we haven't had dances yet, our powwows, our gatherings. And that's something that, we always used to go and participate in. I mean, I'm still a dancer. I dance jingle, and so many kids are missing out. Because in our tradition, when we introduce our children to dancing, they have started at an early age. Some of them start as early as soon as they can walk. They do they're invited into the circle of dancing. So we're missing that, and a lot of the young families are missing that because that was a regular part of raising your children, exposing them to that as soon as they are born. And so that's one thing that we miss as adults as well, visiting people. And so we are sure missed out a lot, not just us, but our whole communities. So what I'm going to read you this book. It's called The Love of the Dance. And it's very well put together. There's even illustrations, and it has the thing I'm talking about with the visiting and the dancing together. That's what it's all about. So I'll read the first one. So if anybody has any questions, you can answer those at the end. Don't worry, Paul said to his friend Jeff as he pressed the down button to open the truck window. You don't have to know exactly where the powwow grounds are when you are going to a powwow. You just need to listen for the sound of the drums. Paul leaned closer to the open passenger window and tilted his head a little, as though that would help him hear better. Can you hear it? He said. He looked over his shoulder at Jeff, who was sitting in the back seat. Jeff nodded in agreement. It's over there, he said as he pointed over Paul's shoulder towards the sound of the beating drums. Uncle Leonard smiled to himself as he turned the truck to head down the road that he knew would lead to the field of tents, campers, and vehicles. He was amused by his nephew's scouting ability. He was happy to see how excited the boys were about going to the powwow. Uncle Leonard and Paul always enjoyed traveling to powwows together, and this one was special. It was Jeff's first powwow. Jeff and Paul had become friends right from the start when Paul arrived at his new school after spring break. The two boys were in the same class. They were partners in their science fair project, played baseball together after school. Now they were on their summer break. Paul wanted to share some of his culture with Jeff. Jeff had seen pictures of Paul in his regalia while he visited his friend's house. Their teacher, Miss Baxter, had even read their class a book about the powwow. But Jeff really wanted to see a powwow for himself. He was thrilled when Paul's Uncle Leonard invited him to spend the weekend camping with him at the powwow. Jeff's parents agreed that this would be an amazing opportunity for their son, and now he was actually here. As soon as Uncle Leonard parked the truck, Paul jumped out and flipped his seat forward so that Jeff would jump out too. Uncle Leonard walked around the truck to open the tailgate, and Paul was right there to help. Jeff stood watching the flurry of activity all around him. His ears were filled with clank, clank, clank of bells and the rattle of deer hooves as dancers walked around their camps getting ready. Jeff heard the thunder of the drums, the buzz of people talking, and the sound of children laughing. And over all of the sounds, the voice of the powwow announcer echoed through loudspeakers. Drummers, roll call in 45 minutes. Dancers, get ready. Get 45 minutes to drum call. And grand entry will start at 7:30. So there's everybody getting their regalia out, airing it out, and getting it ready. Uncle Leonard said, I've pulled the gear out of the truck here. You guys can put up the tent and unpack some of the stuff before you get dressed. I'm going to go and register you. You must move fast as we are going to make grand entry. Come on, Paul said as he motioned to Jeff to follow him to the back of the truck. He pulled the curled up tent onto the flat open space beside the truck and began to roll it out on the ground. We don't have to put everything away right away, he said. Just help me set up the tent. We'll throw the blankets, mattresses, and backpacks in here for now. The powwow will go late, so at least we can set this up so we have a place to change. If we're too tired, we'll just make our beds and go to sleep when we get back. We can set up the rest of the camp in the morning. Jeff quickly pulled one corner of the tent out and pegged it while Paul did the opposite corner. He was excited to be part of anything to do with the powwow, especially after hearing Paul talk about it so much. Jeff was also pleased with himself because he knew what grand entry meant, thanks to the stories Paul had shared with him. You better get dressed, Jeff suggested to Paul as they tied the last anchor rope to stretch out the awning on the tent. I'll put the stuff in the tent while you are ready. When you get ready, we don't have much time. By that time, Paul had put his regalia suitcase in the tent. Uncle Leonard was stepping inside with his own bag. You better hurry up, Uncle Leonard directed his nephew with a smile. You don't want to be dancing with the tiny tots at the end of the line. I know, answered Paul with a sideways grin. If I'm running at the last minute to catch up with the other grass dancers, then people will know for sure that I'm your relative. Uncle Leonard laughed out loud at his nephew. The two of them loved to tease one another. As Paul and his uncle were getting dressed in their regalia and preparing for grand entry, Jeff was making a few trips between the truck and the tent with armfuls of blankets, pillows, mattresses, and duffel bags. All the while, he could hear the powwow announcer calling out to the dancers between drum groups as they responded to the drum roll call. That's it, he announced as he set the last bag inside the tent door. I'm ready to go. You might as well wait for us, Uncle Leonard said. We're almost ready. You can walk over to the harbor with us. I already set up our lawn chairs when I went to register. I'll show you where they are so you can go and sit down while we line up for grand entry. Sounds good, Jeff answered. He was trying to sound calm and cool. He could hardly contain his excitement. He was so glad that Uncle Leonard had brought some chairs. He had wondered where he was supposed to sit, if there was something specific he was supposed to do while he was watching the dancers. He wanted to see and hear everything. As the three walked towards the harbor, Jeff was continually amazed by the beautiful regalia that the dancers wore. Even the smallest dancers had such detail in their outfits. There was so much to hear and see, and Jeff was trying hard to pay attention to Uncle Leonard, would direct him where to sit. As they approached the harbor, Uncle Leonard motioned towards 3 lawn chairs in the area and a sea of chairs, drums, and people. It wasn't too hard to pick them out because they all said, now how do I say this? Wasapa, Wasepa, Wasepa, I guess that's their last name, in thick black permanent marker on the backs. I put us by the pole so that I can tie my bustle up there when I'm not dancing. We'll come and sit with you when it's not one of our categories. Sure, nodded Jeff, trying to keep up with every word. He began to make his own way between the chairs and the people to get to their seats, as Paul and Uncle Leonard headed directly towards the swarm of dancers behind the announcer's stand. They made it just in time as the announcer called upon the host drum for grand entry. Jeff stood straight and tall with the other spectators while the stick man brought the dancers with the eagle staff and the flags into the harbor. As all of the dancers proudly danced in, Jeff remembered Paul had told him about how sacred all of that was. He knew that the people had great respect for the eagle staff, the regalia, the drums, the songs, and the dances. Jeff could see how proud the people were and felt so proud in order to be a part of the celebration as he watched his friend dance into the harbor. After the prayers and the opening protocols were finished, Jeff dropped onto his chair. He didn't know he was sweating more because of the hot weather or his anxiety about doing the wrong thing. All he knew was that he wished he had an eagle fan like Uncle Leonard and Paul to cool himself off, or maybe he should have slipped the electric fan into his bag. People might have laughed at him, but he would feel so good right now. Jeff watched the dancers in all of their different styles of dancing. In the beginning, Jeff couldn't keep his eyes off Paul and Uncle Leonard. He saw his friend in a way that he had never seen before. It was amazing. As the powerful beat of the drum and the strong voices of the singers continued to fill the air, Jeff's eyes wandered from dancer to dancer. He marveled at the beauty of the regalia and the uniqueness of each dancer's style. Before he even noticed that they were gone from the harbor, Paul and Uncle Leonard were sitting in their chairs beside Jeff. It's a warm evening and I'm getting old, Uncle Leonard laughed. Only 3 intertribals, I already need a rest and some water from the cooler. Jeff laughed and pulled a bottle of water out of the cooler for Uncle Leonard. Does everyone keep dancing like this all night? He asked. I'm not even that old. I wouldn't be able to last that long. Dancing at a powwow takes a lot of energy. Not every dancer dances every song, Uncle Leonard said, after taking a long drink of water. They are called intertribals. All of the dancers dance together on these ones. Even though people who are not dressed in their regalia can dance in intertribals, there are always a few intertribals right after each grand entry, and then from time to time during the powwow. Now it made sense to Jeff. He had heard the announcer call an intertribal everybody dance. He didn't know what an intertribal was. He also wondered why there were some people dressed in their regular clothes out dancing in the harbor. Even some non-Indigenous guests were dancing. Yep, Paul said. Pretty soon they are going to start with the categories. When they do that, all of the dancers have to clear the harbor and only that category that the announcer calls can be there. When they call junior boys grass, that's my turn. I'll dance with the other boys my age who are grass dancers. Then I can dance in the intertribals between categories when they have them. Jeff nodded his head to show Paul that he was following what Paul was telling him. He remembered the first time that Paul had shown Jeff his regalia. Jeff had explained that he was a grass dancer and that was why he had long, strands of colored wool hanging from his shirt, leggings, and breechcloth. Paul had explained that when he danced, he would weave and sway back and forth like the tall prairie grass in the wind. Paul had explained to Jeff that long ago, the grass dancers would go ahead of the people when it was time to move and then set up a new camp or lodge. These men would dance their way, weaving and swaying and stomping their feet to flatten down the long grass until it formed a thick, soft pad on the ground that they would set up their teepees and lodges on. You're not a grass dancer, right? Jeff asked Uncle Leonard. I don't see any wool or long ribbons on your regalia. Good eye, Uncle said, after drinking water. I dance men's traditional. So what's that? Jeff asked with great interest. Men's traditional dancers can be warriors or hunters. Some dances tell stories about tracking enemies or animals in a hunt. That dance is called a sneak up. They are also what we call straight traditional dances where men dance their own style as warriors or hunters. There's also men's fancy bustle, said Paul. This one is so awesome. The men are really fast and athletic. They are really bright and colorful, and they spin and pivot, and some even do cartwheels. Wow, responded Jeff in amazement. He knew what a bustle was because he had watched Paul's dad working on a bustle for one of his nephews. Jeff remembered being in awe of how intricate the work was as Paul's dad had carefully placed each feather in a tactful place. It all seemed so delicate. And he couldn't believe that a dancer could do all that with a bustle tied to his back. Jeff was even more impressed when Paul told him that the men's fancy dancers wore two bustles. Uncle Leonard explained, the men's fancy dance comes from Oklahoma, but men all over Turtle Island have adopted the dance. Sure, I saw them in the grand entry, Jeff said, with a bright smile and sparkle in his eye. I can't wait to see them dance in their category. It sounds so awesome. My cousin Bobby might be there and he dances men's fancy now, I think, Paul said. No, he's chicken, corrected Uncle Leonard. Oh, that's sad, said Jeff. Is it the loud sound of the drum that scares him, or is he too shy to dance? Paul and Uncle Leonard laughed. He's not scared, Uncle Leonard clarified. Men's chicken dancers dance an old style that represents the motions and the actions of the prairie chicken. I have been told it came from southern Alberta in Blackfoot country originally. Oh, laughed Jeff with some embarrassment. I wondered why someone would be scared of this. The chicken dancer would have asked me the same thing if he saw how much I was sweating when I first got here. I really didn't know what to expect, but this is awesome. Paul smiled at his friend and reassured him. My mom loves watching chicken dancers. They are her favorite. She said that she usually loves watching the little ones as they strut around and imitate the head motions of the prairie chicken. Uncle, look, Paul cried excitedly. There's Yan. I didn't know they were coming this weekend. Paul and Uncle looked over to the young women preparing to dance in the teen girls' fancy category. Jeff wasn't sure why they were talking about, but Paul waved and the young woman with a yellow shawl smiled and nodded back at them as she prepared to dance in her category. That's my cousin Leanne, Paul explained to Jeff. She lives in Saskatchewan with her family, and sometimes they come out here to dance. I thought they were going to be at a different powwow in Saskatchewan, but I'm glad that we get to see them. She's really good. Watch out for her. Cool, said Jeff. What kind of dance is that? It's a teen fancy shawl dance, said Paul. We usually call them ladies fancy. Do they try to outdo each other like in the men's fancy? Jeff asked. Ladies fancy is different, Uncle Leonard said. Some people say that the shawl dancers imitate a butterfly. The story that I was told is that the ladies fancy dance is about a woman who was in mourning after the death of her husband. It was said that after she mourned for 1 year, she was ready to come back to the circle. The dance is her way of showing that she is alive and ready to express her joy for life like a beautiful butterfly after it comes out of a cocoon. They really do look beautiful, said Paul. He watched the young women spin and kick up their feet as their arms moved swiftly and gracefully, making their shawls flow around them. See, here's this the dancer, and there's the butterflies. Now their outfits are really colorful and beautiful like butterflies too, said Jeff. Uncle Leonard had been listening to the boys as they checked out their own bustle to ensure that no feathers had come loose before it was his turn to dance again. They are really beautiful. It really is beautiful, and the spirit of our dances and our ways are the real strength and beauty. It's hard to believe that the colonial governments that came to our lands thought it would be a good idea to make this illegal, isn't it? What do you mean, making this illegal? Asked Jeff, looking totally confused. He had learned from Miss Baxter that the British government and then Canada had forced many laws on First Nations people on their own land, but he had not heard anything about the powwow being against the law. Yep, just like the potlatch of our brothers and sisters of the West and so many of the ceremonies of other nations that lived on these lands long before settlers, the government imposed laws on our people, make it illegal for us to gather and to dance powwow. Paul was very sad just thinking about it, while Jeff looked shocked. I don't get it, he said. How come something as beautiful and positive and fun as a powwow be against the law? I'm so glad that our people are so strong, Paul said with a proud smile. I can't even imagine not being able to express myself and who I am in this way, but I sure cannot imagine not being able to hang out with my cousins and my other relatives. I can't imagine how you're not being able to have a bannock burger every weekend, chuckled Uncle Leonard. It was the courage and faith of our people that kept our ways alive. And it was also our humor that carried us through. So who wants a bannock burger? I'm going to go for a bannock taco personally. When will they dance again? Asked Jeff after the category had finished and the girls were walking to line up in front of the harbor. Wow, you didn't get that excited when I finished dancing. Settle down. I know they are beautiful, but they are my cousins too. They might have some intertribals between ladies categories, or they might finish up all the junior ladies categories first. Don't worry, they aren't going to go anywhere. Jeff blushed and could feel his sweat coming down on his forehead, but this time he knew it was because he was embarrassed. He gave Paul a little nudge and then was happy to hear the clank of the small metal coins as the junior ladies, jingle dress dancers, were called to the dance area by the announcer. I guess they are going to finish all of the junior ladies right away, said Paul, as he watched the girls find their own places in the harbor and got themselves into the starting positions. The one in the purple and white is Lisa, Leanne's sister, Jeff explained as he excitedly pointed out his cousin to Jeff. She dances jingle like her mom. I like the sound of those little bells, Jeff said as they watched the dancers. He quickly caught himself and added, the same way I like the sound of deer hooves clicking along in your ankles. Our ladies' bells are called jingles, Paul explained. That dance is special to our relatives. It's because it's the Ojibwe medicine dance, and some of my mom's relatives are Ojibwe. Now, lots of women from all different nations dance jingle. My baby sister Laura will be the jingle dress dancer. I hope, Paul said. When my mom's auntie was young, she was given the right to dance jingle. She told me that back in the day, you only danced jingle if you had been given the right. That's because of the medicine dance. My mom says that times change and we change with them. So how many women and girls dance jingle because they chose that style of dance for powwow? What is a medicine dance? Asked Jeff. Does it make people better? Some people still know the story of how the healing dance was given many years ago, answered Leonard. Many years ago, an Ojibwe woman had a dream. And he continued. Her people were living in a time of great sickness, and she had a dream that would help them out, help them get better. It was said that in her dream she was given a dress to make, The dress had 365 shells on it to represent each day of the year. She also saw in the dream that the dancers could dance sideways as they shuffled their feet. And that way, they would make the shells cling together to get the attention of the Creator. The dance is the prayer. The dance has changed a lot over the years, said Leonard. Now many of the girls dance faster. Some like fancy dancers. We still see old style though. Now they call it Ojibwe round dance or sidestep. Maybe they'll do one of those songs this weekend and you'll see what I mean. If you do, I'll show you the difference. Jeff was listening closely, although he still looked a bit confused. These things don't look like shells, he said. You're right, said Uncle Leonard. That has changed too. Now the dancers have metal cones called jingles instead. You know, modern, he laughed. Jeff laughed. Jeff watched the girls gracefully wave their way in and out in the winding pattern around the harbor. He thought that this might be his favorite category of dancing because he really liked the sound of the jingles and he loved the story of their meaningful dance. After the jingle dress dancers had finished, they cleared the dance area. Jeff heard the announcer call out, all junior fancy traditional dancers come to the center of the circle. Ladies traditional, get ready, you're up next. Jeff turned his head sharply towards Uncle Leonard. The ladies don't dance like they are tracking animals or hunting animals, do they? No, said Leonard, as he watched the relief settle on Jeff's face. They're called ladies traditional because this is the original woman style of dancing that really came from the old times. Long ago, women didn't dance in the harbor like the men do. They would dance in one spot as they stood in the circle behind the men who sang at the drum, and they would help with the singing. Later, as powwow changed, the women's traditional became a category of dance of its own. Oh, I see, said Jeff. He looked out over the women dancing in the harbor. His eyes moved from dancer to dancer, and then to the drummers who sang that powerful song, and then all of the dancers standing in their regalia as they watched the categories. Jeff was overwhelmed by the beauty of the dancers and their regalia, the strength in the drum, the voices of the singers, and by the incredible feeling of belonging that everyone seemed to have in the circle. Jeff was mostly amazed how peaceful he felt in that circle. How about we dance a couple of intertribals now? Paul said. Good idea. Are you coming too? He said. What does that mean? Jeff asked. It means the one with the big eyes, Uncle Leonard said. It's good the way you open your eyes and look and take this all in. That's how you learn. That's going to be my name for you. So do you want to join us for an intertribal? Or are you going to stay here with your big eyes open wide and take in every move? Jeff laughed. He liked his new name. He didn't know what made him happier. The fact that Uncle Leonard had given him his own name, or that Uncle Leonard was now joking with him the same way he joked with Paul. I think I'll stay here and use my eyes for a while until I get this right. And then I'll come and try moves a little bit later. Uncle Leonard and Paul laughed as they moved towards the dance area. They knew that it wouldn't be long before Jeff would be out there with them dancing in his own style in the intertribal. So that is the end of the story. But it is an incredible feeling, you know, when you're a dancer, you line up by categories. Usually the elder men and women, they call us golden age. And that golden age, I think, is after 55 years old, right?
I guess so.
I don't remember what, it's been so long. It's been so long since I've been to a powwow. But there is an order that, you know, when you dance grand entry, and there is a proper protocol, and there's also proper songs that are sung. And usually when we're at a powwow, if you're in the audience, you stand up to show respect for all the dancers that come in. And then we just keep going around in a circle and keeps going around until it's all the dancers are in. And usually the last ones that come in are the tiny tots, like the young children. Those are the last ones that come in. And when you come in, you dance your style and your style of dance. And I dance old style jingle. But you know, you dance for, sometimes grand entry takes almost an hour. So imagine, you have to,
In shape.
conserve your energy and be in shape. And so that's the challenge. And usually some older people like myself will, after we do the grand interview, just go in and sit down because it takes a long time to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and I hope one day that you have an opportunity to go to a powwow where you can witness this and feel that energy and get up and dance. Everybody's always welcome to dance at those intertribals. So Clarence is going to do the next one. That's
Oh. And I have to zip through this.
Yeah, I have to zip through that one.
Yeah, she took long.
I didn't know all this one.
Okay, this is the offering of tobacco. Now, whenever we, I'll just read this. It'll explain everything. Paul Wasepa was a bit nervous as he walked towards Miss Baxter's class at the end of the school day. He really liked his teacher and he couldn't imagine what she might want to see him about. She was very nice to him, and he always was always interested in his ideas in class. Paul actually was surprised by how much he liked his new school. He had been nervous about changing schools when his family moved here, but it had turned out really well so far. The kids were very interested in learning about Paul and his people. He had thought maybe they would be unkind to him because there were not many Indigenous kids in the school. But so far, so good. Today was unexpectedly tough. This was the first time Paul had been asked to come back to Ms. Baxter's class after gym at the end of the day. He was racking his brain trying to think of what he might have done wrong. Well, he would soon find out, as he had now arrived at the classroom door. "Come in, Paul," said Miss Baxter. Paul stepped into the doorway. She motioned towards a chair at the table where she was sitting. A big stack of papers was clearly keeping her busy. Wow, Paul thought. Maybe Miss Baxter did something wrong. It sure looks like she is being punished. That's more paperwork than I've ever had. Miss Baxter could almost read Paul's thoughts as she looked at his wide eyes, staring at the stack of papers waiting to be marked. "I know, right?" she laughed. "Good thing I like you guys so much, or I'd really have to rethink this teaching thing. So much for marking." The fact that Miss Baxter was joking helped Paul ease Paul's mind, but he still had to know what was going on in "Am I in trouble?" he asked as he walked towards the chair. "Not at all," said the teacher with a reassuring smile. "I'm just hoping you can help me out a bit. I'm getting ready to teach the new science curriculum, and I wanted to ask you about some things." "Okay," Paul answered, a little confused. He was pretty good at science, but he had never been asked to help with the curriculum before. Many times when we are learning things in class, you have such interesting information to share. I often hear you talk about how you've learned these things from people in your family. I was thinking it would be awesome to have all of our students learn from some of your teachers. I wanted to ask you first." Paul listened with interest. He still wasn't sure what Ms. Baxter wanted his help with, but it sounded intriguing. "Do you think it would be okay to ask your grandparents to come in to teach us something that we should all know?" Paul was surprised, but really excited. He was very aware that Mitushin and Magushin knew many things, but he was surprised that his teacher had figured that out. Paul's grandparents had taught him so many things, but he had never really thought of them as teachers. He knew that they were amazing. That would be great, Paul replied. I think it would be so cool to have the Tushin and Magushin come in and teach our class. But you'd have to ask them. That's why I need your help, Paul. I don't know much about Nakoda protocols, but I know that I want to learn. I know that there are certain ways to approach an elder. I was told that I should offer tobacco. Is that right? Well, Paul said, that is what we do in my family when we want to ask someone for help. You are asking Mitushin and Magushin if you could talk, if you can talk to them about sharing what you know, so offering tobacco is a good start. Actually, Paul added with a nod of approval, I'm really impressed that you understand that offering tobacco doesn't mean you are promoting smoking. Many non-Indigenous people get all freaked out when they hear offering tobacco because they start to lecture us about the health hazards of smoking. Magushin says, we need to tell them about the sacred use of tobacco. It's the plants that we are offering for use in ceremony and not cigarettes. We are already ahead of the game because you know what it really means. Ms. Baxter being the little as Paul praised her. When mom and Magushin take me out to pick berries in the summer, we always put tobacco and thank Makuche and the berries for giving us food to keep us healthy. Paul continued. Ena says that we never take anything from Ena Makuche without giving something back, so we offered tobacco. Paul noticed that his teacher looked a little bit confused, and he realized she didn't understand Nakura. Oh yeah, he said with a little grin. Ena Makuche means Mother Earth in our language. Ena is mother and mom. Mitushin is grandpa and Magushin is grandma. Thanks, smiled Miss Baxter. You almost lost me there for a minute. No problem, replied Paul with an understanding nod. There are lots of things we can teach each other. That's what Magushin always says. She teaches me lots of things. When we go pick berries, when we go pick sweetgrass, Magushin reminds me that we should never pull plants out by the roots because that will kill them. She tells me that plants have families too, and if we pull them out of the ground, that will be the end of their family. Magushin lets me put down some tobacco too, so we can both thank Magush and Makuche for the gifts she gives to us. Tobacco is also a gift that we give to the Sweetgrass family in return for their gift to us. Magushin says that I teach her patience when we are braiding sweetgrass. I'll laugh. I think that is a nice way of saying I'm slow and my sweetgrass braids aren't the most even and beautiful ones in the bunch. I keep trying though. Magushin says that's how we learn. That is such a beautiful and important teaching, Paul, Ms. Baxter said with an appreciative nod. You actually just taught me something important that I will need to include in our science lessons about plants. Maybe you should be teaching us that part. You really have a good knowledge, a lot of knowledge for an 11-year-old. Thanks, Miss Baxter, Paul replied. He was happy that he could help. Anna says that we are all students and we are all teachers. We need to listen and watch to learn from people who take time to teach us, and we need to share what we learn with others so that we can all live together in a good way, because everything has a life and spirit. My parents and grandparents always remind me that we never ask for something without giving back. They say that's the way of our people. And offering tobacco was one of the ways that was given to us to do. The other thing you need to think about is what you are actually asking for, Paul explained. I know you want Magoshin and Mitoshin to teach about science, but that would take them all day, every day for the whole year, and we still wouldn't be finished. When you offer someone tobacco, you have to say what you are asking for so they can decide if they will accept the tobacco or not. Different people have different knowledge. An elder won't accept the tobacco if they don't know the knowledge that you are asking for. They will guide you to the person you need to talk to. That's really good to know, Paul. There is so much to learn, but I'll start with the units that make the most sense to ask your grandparents about. Do you know any suggestions, Ms. Bachelor was eager to learn more? Well, I know that Mr. Shin knows a lot about the stars. You could ask him to teach us about that. Things like the star formations and where they are in the sky at different times of the year. I am only starting to learn, so I'm not much help there. I need to learn more about that myself, Paul admitted. At this point, I can only tell you that if you can't see the stars at night, then it's cloudy. They both chuckled. But seriously, Paul added, Mitoshin has told me stories about how our people used the stars to guide them when they were moving their villages at different times of the year. Magushin could teach us about plants and the water. I know we are supposed to learn about wetlands this year in science, Paul continued. I don't know a lot about that yet either, but Magushin tells me that the wetlands are like Anna Makuche's kidney. I don't know everything about the human kidney or the wetlands, but I know it has something to do with the plants in the wetlands cleaning the water the same way the human kidney cleans our blood. I'm impressed, Paul, as Baxter proclaimed. That's 2 of our science units already. This is so exciting. I will be learning so much as all of my students if we can get your grandparents to come in and teach us. One of the things that I am learning about from Mitoshin is forest farming, Paul beamed with pride. What is forest farming? Disaster asked, showing genuine interest. Is that like tree farming, where farmers plant trees in rows and grow them to sell? Not exactly, Paul explained. Mitoshin says that he hears non-First Nations people call it forest management, but he says he can't really manage something that is more powerful than us. Mitoshin is teaching me about how our people used to select a place in the forest where the right type of trees are growing for a particular purpose. There is much to learn about how to clean out unwanted plants from the area, remove unwanted branches, and lots of other steps to give the trees the environment that they need to grow to a certain size and certain shape. That's amazing, Ms. Baxter exclaimed. She looked even more impressed. I know, said Paul. Mitoshin reminds me to think about these things logically. He asked me questions like, do you actually think that our ancestors would wander around for weeks and months in hopes of finding just the right tree for a canoe or a bow? Miss Baxter and Paul looked at one another for a moment, then both shrugged with their shoulders. Good point, nodded Miss Baxter. That's so much for me to learn that I don't know where to start. Just think about what you want to ask. My grandparents can guide you from there. If they have time and agree to visit our school to share their teachings. Paul was full of suggestions. Wow, said Miss Baxter with a sigh of relief. I sure came to the right person for advice. I have already talked to the principal about the budget. It's important that we pay people for their time and when they can come to teach us at school. I can handle that part about how we pay people to teach us things. But you know what I need to do when I go out to ask elders, knowledge keepers, or other community members for help. We make a good team, Paul. Now I better call your mom to see if she can help me set up a time to meet Mitushin and Magushin. That sounds good, Paul replied. Also, I'll teach you a little more Nakota before you call because you just called them Grandpa and Grandma. You should say Nitushin and Magushin and Negoshin because that means your grandpa and your grandma. Paul laughed as Miss Baxter shook her head and covered her mouth with one hand. That is possible, Paul said with a smile. Adoption is a practice of our people as well, and I'll tell you more about that on another day. That sounds like a good deal, Paul. Miss Baxter replied as she smiled and held out her hand to shake Paul's hand in agreement. In the meantime, I'll practice the Nakota words that you taught me today and get my tobacco ready to offer Mitoshin and Negoshin. I'd better let you get going to your mom, or your mom will be calling me to see what is taking you so long. And I'd better let you get back to your marking. Paul agreed. By the way, you might want to talk to Mitoshin and Magushin about oral tradition as well. If you started teaching the way our people always did, the students would have to work harder to remember what we learned. On the plus side, you would have a lot less marking to do. The end. I like these stories.
That's a good one. Can you show the picture or the front cover? Okay. And who is that one by?
The same wins, Charlene and Wilson Bearhead and Chloe Wilburton Mashtuch.
They're good. They're good books.
Yes.
Yeah.
They just came out just recently, so.
Yeah.
From BC.
Yeah, from British Columbia.
Yeah, it's very thorough and
Oh, here it is. Highwater Press, www.highwaterpress.com.
right.
Winnipeg,
Yeah.
Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Oh, is it here?
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah, we can't give these away because she signed them all to us.
Okay. We'll have to order our own.
Yeah.
So I guess that concludes our session.
Yes, Miigwech. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, we'll talk soon then.
Okay.
Thank you for people that were on online to watch this. Good
Yep, we'll
afternoon.
put the recording up for everyone who missed today, or if you want to go back and revisit some of the stories. And
Yeah. For sure. All right.